Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you all hear me? All right, great. I'm Emily Cain. I'm very proud to be running for Congress here in the 2nd Congressional District. Today, we are here to focus on an issue that I hear about a lot. I hear about Medicare and Social Security everywhere I go. I hear about it from seniors who have it, who are wanting to make sure it's going to continue to be there. I hear about it from working families who want to know that what they're paying into is still going to be there for them. And I think it's reasonable to expect that when you work hard and you follow the rules, the things that are supposed to be there for you, like Medicare and Social Security, will be. I'm happy to be here today. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. Not all of you have known me for a long time, with one exception. My former Dean of Students from the University of Maine, Dwight Rideout, here in the back, who has actually known me since I was 18 years old. You've known me about half my life, Dwight. It's true. It's true. The best half, absolutely. We'll let our other neighbors come in. There you go. How are you? Nice to see you. There you go. So, I'm Emily Cain. I live in Orono. I served 10 years in the state legislature. I served 8 years in the state house down in Augusta, where I had the privilege of serving our state as the chair of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. That's the budget committee, which I chaired during the recession, during very difficult times for our state. I also had the privilege of serving in leadership in the state house. I was the minority leader in the Maine House at the beginning of Governor LePage's term in office. I'm one of the Democrats he gets along with.
Yay!
There we go. It's true. He even says nice things about me sometimes in public. And we work together on things like balancing the budget, lowering taxes, and on ending the cycle and breaking the cycle of domestic violence in Maine. I'm running for Congress now, building on that experience in the House, and then I went on to serve in the Senate. But really, for me, it all starts with my own background. My family moved several times when I was a kid. We moved because my dad worked in the shoe business. He's a shoe salesman, and he started in the back room of a shoe store when he was 14 years old. He never went to college. He's now in his early 60s and is still in the shoe business today. My mom is a sign language interpreter, and she's a teacher. And I'm very lucky to be the oldest of 3 sisters. Emily, Elizabeth, and Eileen, all E's. I've also been married for 12 years to a wonderful guy. We just celebrated our 12th anniversary, a guy named Danny Williams. And if you ever come up to Orono to go to the Collins Center for the Arts, you ever come up for the symphony or shows, my husband runs the Collins Center, and he's the really nice guy who'll greet you out front when you come in and will greet you from the stage before the show starts. For me, why I'm here today is because what the issues facing our state and our country, well, the stakes are very high in this election. And there's a lot of people out there who are very worried, whether it's about their Social Security and their Medicare, or they're worried that the job they have now might not be there for them in a year. They're worried about the employees they have now. Will they still be able to keep them on in a year from now? Or will they be able to grow? There's a lot of anxiety out there. And I really think it's important as we think about Social Security and Medicare and all of the issues facing us, that we focus both on stopping the bad things from happening as much as we can. That's really one of the focuses of today, is making sure we protect that promise of Social Security and Medicare. And then it's about making sure that we can thrive and grow economically here across Maine, particularly here in the 2nd Congressional District, which is large and rural and is an older population, but a vibrant one for sure, and full of hardworking Mainers who really want just a fair shot at a good life, which means being able to take care of your kids, being able to provide for your family, and that's no different than what my family went through. I'm really glad to be joined here today by my friend Max Richmond. Max is here. He flew up today. He'll tell you. He's from the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. And I am proud, and I'll let him tell you why he's here today, but I'm very happy to have him with us. And what I'm hoping today will be, after Max says a few words, is an opportunity for you to ask questions about Social Security and Medicare, things you're hearing, things you're concerned about, and for us to have an honest conversation about what's going on. So happy to be here today, and what a beautiful building this is. It's really a special place. Max, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Max Richmond. I'm the president and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. That's the second largest senior citizen lobbying group in the country, second to AARP, which we work with on many, many things very closely. And I flew up this morning for a very important reason, and that's to endorse Emily Cain in her campaign to be elected to Congress from this congressional district. And then after that event, we had a town hall meeting somewhere. I have no idea. She's been driving.
We were in Bangor. We had a big rally in front of the federal building, the Margaret Chase Smith building in Bangor. That was a success. And then we also had a town hall like this at Sunbury Village in Bangor.
And I wanted just to tell you.
Could you speak a little more?
I will. I wanted to tell you why we made the endorsement of Emily and mention a couple of issues. We're not a partisan organization. We're not a Democrat or Republican. In fact, we have for many of Senator Collins' campaigns, we have supported her with our Political Action Committee. We've done a lot of work with the Senate Aging Committee that she chairs. But we look at candidates' positions on issues. And she has come down to our office a couple times, filled out our questionnaire twice, and answered the questions, in our opinion, correctly. And we believe she's committed to protecting Social Security and Medicare. She's the candidate in this race for U.S. House that we feel will do the best job in representing the needs of seniors in her district and around the country. So we made that decision, and that's why I came up to do the endorsement. And then we had a meeting where we took questions, and I'm not going to give a long talk because I want to have as much time to answer any of the questions you have about what's happening in Washington, your Social Security, your Medicare. But I wanted to mention one thing based on what you just said, that we want to prevent bad things from happening, which is true. We don't want to see Social Security privatized. We don't want to see Medicare turned into a voucher program where you lose traditional Medicare and you get basically a coupon and you're told to go out and look for your doctor and there's no backup, no traditional Medicare. So we want to keep those bad things from happening. And we've been doing that for a long time. Our organization was founded by former Congressman James Roosevelt, who was a congressman from California, and he was the oldest son of President Roosevelt. And when he left Congress, he retired in the early 80s, and he realized that what President Reagan was determined to do to Social Security, he wanted to have an organization that would preserve what he felt was his father, Franklin Roosevelt's greatest legacy, that being Social Security. So he founded the Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. And I came about 11 or 12 years after that. And we've been trying to keep bad things from happening for a long time. But we, in the last year or two, decided we need to still keep bad things from happening, but we need to try to improve things as well. And that's why we support some of the bills that have been in Congress, some of the bills that Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton have been talking about during their primaries, and some of the bills that House members have been talking about in terms of Medicare. On Social Security, what I think we need to start working on is improving Social Security benefits. We need to raise the minimum benefit, and we support bills. There's a bill by John Larson, Connecticut, that would raise the minimum benefit by about $70 a month, which may not seem like a lot to some people, but it's a lot when you're just getting by. Would improve the cost of living adjustment in a way that would have meant there would be a COLA this year, and there's not, as you know, and would build into Social Security is something called a caregiver credit, which means when someone leaves the workforce, and it's usually women, to raise families, to take care of children, to take care of an elderly relative, even if it may not be her parent, that person would get some credits counted towards Social Security. Even though they're not getting a paycheck, not getting wages, there'd be a formula that would give them some credits so that they don't not only lose money since they're not getting paid a paycheck, but they aren't losing money in their Social Security because they haven't contributed enough quarters since they had to leave the workforce. Those are important things that I was telling Emily, I was on the platform committee of the Democratic Convention, and I worked on proposals that would do just that, would have an accurate cost of living adjustment and a caregiver credit, and it's in the platform, and it's supported by the Democrat nominee, and it was supported by Bernie Sanders. I would have gone to the Republican Party platform committee if I'd been invited, but nobody invited me. So on Medicare, it's how many of you are on Medicare? You think Medicare is a pretty good program? It is a great program, but there are some gaps in Medicare. Am I talking loud enough? Okay.
Fine now,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, I got these recently too, so I know. Medicare is a great program, but there are some gaps in the Medicare program, and you know this. It doesn't cover hearing, it doesn't cover vision, it doesn't cover dental. That's pretty important stuff for everybody, but especially for a senior. And I think about hearing, and I was lucky enough to be able to afford hearing aids, but many people cannot. But hearing is not just a question of being able to hear what's happening in a meeting. It's a question of safety, hearing alarms, understanding what your doctor's talking to you about. So we have been working with a friend of Emily Cain's, Debbie Dingell, a congresswoman from Detroit, Michigan, who's introduced a bill that would at least begin to cover hearing. You would have hearing assessments covered by Medicare, and there'd be some coverage for maybe not the most expensive, but some hearing aids, which make a huge difference for a lot of people. Same with dental care. I've been talking to the lobbyists for the American Dental Association. They oppose having dental care covered under Medicare because they don't want to deal with the regulations and the bureaucracy. Same thing that happened when Medicare was being considered. The doctors tried everything they could to kill it for years, and they did kill it for years. And it finally passed in 1965. Thank God it passed. But there's a lot of resistance to these kinds of things. So I'm hoping when you're in Congress, we can work with you not only to keep bad things from happening, but to make some good things happen as well.
Need to definitely make good things happen too. We'll open it up to questions, and I really want to encourage you to ask anything. If we don't know the answer, we'll try to help you get it. And really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I see a hand in the back.
What effect does the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry have on Medicare?
Well, it's tremendous.
Yeah.
I talked about this, should I?
Yeah, well, you go and then I'll go. But
I
got
talked
some
about
things
this
to say
at
too.
the previous meeting. You know that in 2003, Congress passed a law that added Part D to Medicare, a prescription drug benefit that is now part of Medicare. You have your Part A, which is your doctors, your Part B. Part A is your hospitals, Part B is your doctors and other providers. You have Part D, which is prescription drug benefit. I don't know how many of you sign up for Part D. You're probably still paying quite a bit for your drugs, right? So when that law passed, I worked on that. And we wanted a Medicare to cover prescription drugs for years. And what we got was the best that we could get through the Congress. It had the donut hole in it. Remember that? Where you had coverage up to a point, then you had no coverage until you had practically gone broke, paying out of pocket, and then you had catastrophic coverage. But the reason their drugs are so expensive now for Medicare is the law has a provision in it that prohibits the government from negotiating with the drug companies. So can you imagine any company with millions of employees that doesn't negotiate with an insurer? This is just, it's really obscene. But the drug companies, the pharmaceutical, it's called PhRMA, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturer Research Association, it's a huge lobby, made sure that for them to sign off on President Bush's Medicare prescription drug bill, that the government wouldn't negotiate, because that would mean they would make more money if the government couldn't negotiate. So that's why, even with this good coverage, which we were for, it was not perfect, and the main reason it wasn't perfect is the government couldn't get a good price. Like, as Emily pointed out, veterans, the Veterans Administration, they have that authority, and they can get drugs for a much better price. So you know that.
Well, I think negotiating the cost of prescription drugs when you have the buying power and people power of Medicare is just common sense. There's no question that it was big pharma, big money that came in to prevent that, as Max described, having been there. But I think the sad part is that there have been opportunities to change it. That bill has come up for a vote in the Congress, including in the last few years. And the member of Congress here, Bruce Poliquin, did not support that change. He said it was okay the way it was. And I disagree. I think it makes sense. We have a great model in the VA with the Veterans Administration, with the health program, where they do negotiate the cost of prescription drugs. That's common sense. The same way if you were a business and you were doing it there for your employees as well. This is the kind of common sense thing that, it's almost just shocking that it hasn't happened. It's the kind of thing that makes you angry, because it's so easy. And the cost of prescription drugs, I'm not surprised. That was one of the first questions here today, because it's one of the things I hear about everywhere I go. I travel this state from Freiburg all the way around the Canadian border, down east in Belfast, and in through Bangor, down through Kennebec County and Lewiston, Auburn, and over again. And that is universal. And again, it's that disconnect in the same household, someone covered by veterans health care, the same family, and someone who's not. Prescription drugs, different prices. It's a real challenge. It's the kind of common sense thing I think we need to do, and that is only being stopped in Congress because of the influence of things like Big Pharma. For sure. Yes?
Many officials consider Social Security an entitlement. I've paid in Social Security for 2,700 weeks, which is over 50 years. And because of my income level, my benefits are reduced. I pay higher than the average for my Part D, for my Part F. Then my Social Security benefits are also taxed. So it is not possible for me to stop working because I can't live on that Social Security benefit. When is that going to be resolved, if ever, so that we aren't penalized for the money that we've paid in over our lifetime?
So what is your, if
Go
I could
ahead.
ask you,
Yeah.
what is your question related
My question
to
is
the tax
this
on
is
Social
money that
Security?
I've paid in over
Yeah.
my lifetime.
Right.
And now they're deducting and reducing my benefits because of my income level.
You're paying tax on it, that's
I'm
right.
paying tax on it, and they're also charging me a premium on my Part D and
Right.
Part F
Right,
because of my present income level. But
right,
it's my money to start with that I paid in over the past 50 years.
right. I don't blame you for not liking that situation, but I'll tell you how we got to that point. As part of the reforms, the last time Social Security was reformed, there was, back in the early 80s, 83 amendments. Alan Greenspan chaired a group that made recommendations that were adopted by the Congress. And one of the things that was done is there was a tax on Social Security benefits above a certain income level. So if you made 25,000 individual or 32,000 a couple, you paid tax on your benefits. And so that applied to a lot of people back then, but the the thing that was wrong with that bill, I think, was that it wasn't indexed. So more and more people are brought into that each year, and that was the plan. There should have been an index. That amount should have gone up every year just because of inflation. And if that, I don't know where your income level is, but it would have protected a lot more people. And we support legislation that's been introduced the last couple of Congress that would index it. In fact, John Larson's bill that I mentioned to you has a section that would index the taxation on benefits. Now, what happened after that was probably more than you want to know, but in President Clinton's first budget, and this is worse for you, not only were those thresholds kept, but the tax went from 50% to 85%, right? That's why you're paying so much, which we opposed. And we did work with AARP so that increase, the difference that you're paying between the 50% tax and the 85% now, that money went to Medicare Part A, which extended the life of the trust fund. So that's that piece of it. On your surtax for your premiums, that was a law that was passed in the last 4 years, that wealthier individuals would pay more for not just their Part D and their Part F, but for their Part B as well. So if you're on Medicare and you still have income, you're going to pay a lot more. Instead of paying the normal price would be a premium is $107 a month. It can be up to $350 a month, and that's probably what applies to you.
And I'll just make one comment, and then we'll go to you. Which is that there are a lot of seniors who are relying just on Social Security and Medicare across our state. You talked about how you really couldn't do that. That's why you're still working. And I will say that's a challenge not only for the seniors themselves, but for their families too, who want to make sure that their parents can age gracefully and with dignity in the communities where they live and they want to be. And it's a real injustice that's happening, I think, particularly to working families across our state who, there's no end in sight to that living on the edge, that a lot of seniors feel. And it's complicated by prescription drugs. When I was in the state legislature, when the donut hole happened, we had a program here in Maine called Drugs for the Elderly. That was a program that did a lot of good things for Maine seniors and helping them being able to afford their prescription drugs. And yet year in and year out, we had to fight to keep it, to make sure that it could live up to its original promise. And that's really, I think, the theme here is making sure that when you do pay in and you follow the rules, that you're not then getting nickel and dimed later on, for sure. Yes?
Is there a single trust fund that serves Medicare and Social Security combined?
It's two different trust funds.
And how are the funds, the reserves, how are those invested?
The Social Security Trust Fund, the reserves, which is now at about $2.8 trillion, are invested in what's called special issue government bonds. They're treasury bonds. And you often hear a lot of, I call it loose talk about, they're just a bunch of IOUs. Probably heard that. There's really no money there. These are government bonds. These aren't, as much as I respect Emily Cain, these aren't little pieces of paper that say Emily Cain owes you 2.8.
Definitely not.
But they're government bonds backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. That's how they're invested.
And that's for both
For both.
funds?
There's much more in the Social Security Trust
Right,
Fund.
because of the difference in age, I assume, of the funds, and maybe the rates of contributions.
Right,
keep the differences,
and these bonds get interest.
Sure.
And I mean, they roll over daily and get
Right,
interest.
and
And the best, one of the best examples that I've used to explain that this money is paid back, because you often hear, well, the government stole the money, they're not going to pay it back. When we had in the depths of the recession, 2009, 2010, we had a lot of unemployment, less people working, less money going into through FICA tax. So not enough money for 3 years either 2 or 3 years, not enough money was paid in payroll taxes to pay everybody their full benefits for like 2009 and 10. But guess what? Everybody got paid their Social Security. They were supposed to get it. The reason being, the interest on the bonds added on to what was paid into through payroll taxes, not only brought enough money to pay everybody their benefits, but added to the size of the trust fund. So this is real money. These are real bonds that are backed by the U.S. government. It's a very good question and a lot of misunderstanding about how all that works.
Dwight, did you have a question?
It's been a while since I've talked about this subject, so I've lost some of the details, but I think I'll be able to give you enough to know what I'm talking about. As I understand it, my wife loses some of my Social Security benefit because she's a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
If she was a lawyer or a doctor or worked at J.C. Penney's or Macy's, she would get my full benefit from what I have earned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite understand why. I understand why she didn't get Social Security because she didn't pay into Social Security. But I don't understand why she loses some of my benefit that if I was married to someone else, which is always still a consideration.
You know, this is being recorded down front, Dwight. Be very careful.
If I was married to someone else, my wife would get that full benefit.
Yeah.
As it is now, because she's a teacher, was a teacher, she gets a considerably reduced benefit. And I just don't understand, I mean, I know it is what it is, but I don't understand how that can't get changed.
And as his wife, I'd like to just add that I have paid into Social Security.
I was going to say, I bet you have.
But because
Most
of the
people have.
WEP, I can't collect it. And so you have those two. Is there going to be any hope for that? I mean, we've worked on it for 15 years. I see
Is this only in the state of Maine?
No,
Is it
no. So
13
I think we're
states.
down to, I think it's working down, I think it might be 11 or 13 now, yeah. So for those who don't know what we're talking about, this is called the windfall elimination provision and the governmental, I wrote it down, pension offset. And this affects people who are on public retirement. Worked in Maine, it affects public employees, like state employees, it affects retired teachers who are in the public retirement system. And it means, literally, as you heard described, it gets counted against what you would get in Social Security. It's wrong,
Yes.
you know, and for whatever reason it first started, it's wrong now and it needs to be changed. That's something, you know, I've worked my career in education, I've worked with a lot of teachers. As I mentioned, my mom's now a retired teacher. It's an injustice, I think, to people who are working hard for the benefit of others every day to have this happen. It's only going to change if Congress makes a change, but that's one of the reasons I think you need to send people to Congress who know how to work together. You know, as I mentioned before, in the legislature, I'm someone who's been known for working across the aisle, working with Republicans, Democrats, Independents, with governors like Governor LePage on very difficult issues. This is the kind of thing where, to me, you got to reach out to the other affected states, make a plan, and build a coalition. You know, there's just no other way to do it. There's no simple fix, and Max can give you the history about the various times it's been tried to be fixed. But it's something that really penalizes people who are working hard and following the rules, and it penalizes families in a way that makes it very hard to plan for the future, you know, in a way that you can feel good about.
How is it done on apparently an individual state basis? I don't understand why there are a few states involved, and you seem to imply that there have been a few more added.
Yeah,
Well, I would think it would be a federal.
do you want to
issue,
explain the
though.
history?
States were allowed to opt out of that if for their public employees. And what I understand is the rationale for this offset, it was to try to discourage them from opting out and bring them into Social Security. So this would penalize, in effect, penalize their public employees. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was a bill that was, there have been many bills that would fix this for quite a few years. And when they don't get through everybody points their finger at somebody else. And I've been to many meetings like this where Democrats will say the Republicans killed it and the Republicans would say Democrats killed it. But you're right, it's only gonna get through if there's a bipartisan effort. Now, 3 weeks ago, there was a bill that would not eliminate the offset completely. It was in the Ways and Means Committee, about to be marked up, which is further than it's ever gone. And we ended up opposing it, and most senior groups opposed it. And the reason was that for every one person that is affected adversely now, that would be helped, 9 other Social Security beneficiaries' benefits would be cut. In other words, in order to get the money to correct this, the majority of beneficiaries would have their benefits cut. And we said we're going to oppose that, because that means, we have about 4 million members and supporters. 90% of them wouldn't be happy if we supported a bill that resulted in their benefits being cut. So we need, you, since you'll be there, you need to figure out a way to fix it without penalizing even more people than it helps. So that's kind of where it's at now.
But I'm glad you mentioned it. It's something that comes up a lot around the state, I think, and more people are really feeling the detrimental effects of it, for sure.
And I'll just add, because you're here about Medicare, I'm not eligible for Medicare because I was employed before 1983. So is there anything in the works to help people in that?
Wait, you're not eligible for Medicare, why?
Because I did not pay into it. I was employed before 1983 in the public teachers.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
It's another.
So I never paid into Medicare, of course.
Sure.
But in this situation, I can get it through a benefit from Dwight. But there are many situations I've seen where there have been 2 teachers married, and neither one is allowed to have Medicare. Can't get it at all. So is there any fix for that in the works at all?
Well,
is anybody addressing that?
Bernie Sanders, when he was talking about Medicare for all, that's what he was talking about.
So that would be,
and that's what we supported. We did as an organization before, when the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was going through the Congress. We supported Medicare for all, but I mean, the votes weren't there. The Affordable Care Act passed by 1 vote. 1 vote in the House and 1 vote in the Senate. That's how close it was, and that was the best they could do. But that's the way it could be fixed.
So is anybody working on it?
Well,
Stimulating it?
Well, I think it
Jabbing
definitely
it?
comes up. It comes up like as another example of inequities in these programs that affect a small group of people, and so that their voices don't get heard as much. I've been doing a lot of these meetings. You're the first one to bring that to my attention in a direct, personal way. That's something I'm going to have to learn more about, so I can tell that story articulately and make sure we can understand why that happens and what the best thing is to do about it. Where, it's the date that seems like it holds you back.
1984 is when it changed.
That's right. Yeah. So that's another thing we'll have to add to that list.
It's really a woman's issue too.
Well, I was going to ask because when you often hear about that, it's people who have been disadvantaged because of their position in the workforce, and it's often women.
Well, the caregiver credit that I mentioned is a woman's issue because they're the ones that often leave. Well, not only do they leave the workforce to raise a family or take care of a parent, and they are not paying in, so they don't have all the quarters they need to get their full Social Security benefits. A caregiver credit that Hillary Clinton supports would apply some of those years. In other words, you wouldn't lose out completely. It wouldn't be the same as if you were getting a paycheck, but it wouldn't be the same as if you didn't make any contribution at all. And the other reason, it really penalizes, it's a women's issue, because not only are you getting less in benefits, but you're putting less in, not only because you leave the workforce, but you're paid less. Right. Women are paid less for the same job. Right. So it's wage discrimination that needs to be addressed as well. You got a lot to do.
I got a lot to do. Well, and then, I mean, but you know, you got to start somewhere, you know, and you start by making sure the person who's in Congress can tell your story and do it well and in a way that you can actually try to solve some of those problems. And I think the other theme that's come up over the course of this day is that all of these things are related to the common challenge that Maine seniors have all across the state, which is just trying to have a fair and good and decent life after you spent your lifetime following the rules and working hard, and how it's not too much to ask to feel secure economically as you get older. And that's a theme that comes up every single day. Doesn't matter whether I'm at a parade or a festival or I'm at somebody's house at their door in their living room. That's a theme that comes up, and I will say it's also a theme for younger families who are already worried about it because they see what their parents are going through and they want to know that they're going to have a fair shot at that retirement. Yeah.
Are there any federal employees affected by these kind of reductions?
I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of
Because federal
that.
employees pay into, they now have to pay, since the 80s, pay into Social Security.
Yeah.
They're covered by Social Security.
Could you
Which
speak up
wasn't
a
the
little
case.
bit more? Speak up.
Well,
They're-
federal employees are covered by Social Security. They have been since the 80s.
There have been a couple of cases, though, where retired veterans, Army people, service people have come in and taught in this state and other states. And they, because they've taught for 10 years and get invested in the state pension, they've lost some of their federal benefits. That has happened several times.
Wow.
Also, not okay.
That's not good.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
They
Being
just
penalized
didn't
for
know.
going back and helping students. That's
That's
crazy.
ridiculous.
That's crazy.
No, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Not just,
You're right.
not just crazy.
Ridiculously crazy.
It's all of the above.
I mean, you'd like to think that if this story got told properly, it would get bipartisan support. Because it does seem to be a case of fairness, and why should a veteran especially lose part of his or her veteran's benefits because he or she taught for 10 years?
Right.
It's
When
crazy.
really we should be encouraging
Yeah,
our veterans who want
Yeah.
to go become teachers.
be a great role model.
Could you
in the
imagine
schools.
saying I'm gonna have to stop teaching because I might, get penalized for helping kids? That's terrible.
Well, that sounds like a start of a good article in the newspaper.
Sure does. Making my list.
Did you know?
Did you know? Well,
Did
there's a lot of these issues. I mean, one of the conversations we've also had today is about the challenges of the cost of living adjustment, which you haven't gotten most years recently. Well, other people have, and how unfair that is. And I was saying, I'll tell the story I told earlier, speaking of teachers, that when I was in the state legislature, when I was chair of the Appropriations Committee, we were dealing with an issue related to the cost of living adjustment that had been promised and was proposed to be taken away. And someone who's quoted in the paper, an elected official, I don't remember exactly who it was, saying, well, it was only going to be $100. $100 is not too much. And a retired teacher from Kennebec County came up to the podium at this hearing and really stopped the room because he got up and said, when you have $100, $100 is not a lot of money. But when you're $100 behind on your bills,
It's a lot of money.
$100 is a lot of money. And I'll never forget it. I actually wrote that quote down on a piece of paper and I stuck it to the microphone that I looked at all of the time, every day. I guess maybe it was when I was in the Senate, but that story stuck with me because it really epitomizes the challenge and the disconnect that I think where Congress is they just figure you must have $100 somewhere, right, if you can go without it. And that's not true. It's not true for seniors in Maine. It's not true for working families in Maine. It's not true for college kids in Maine. We can't just keep nickel and diming people and passing that on to them and assuming that it's somehow, it's not a big deal, when actually it means you just get another $100 behind on the bills.
So what's the general feeling that you hear? What's the rumble, as it were?
Well, as I travel the state, the number one thing I hear and feel from people is that they're worried. There's a lot of economic anxiety. There's seniors who are worried about their housing. You know, they're worried about being able to afford the house they have, where they want to stay, have the care that they need. Talk to veterans who worry about having access to the health care that they need, not having it be too far away. Talk to small businesses who want to expand. They love to expand, but they're really worried about whether or not the 5 employees they have now, that they'll be able to keep them a year later. I was up in Aroostook County meeting with some loggers, and one guy said to me, I said, what do you want? What is your dream? And he said, truthfully, I'd be happy just if I could keep things as they are right now. He said, I got a young guy who works for me. He just bought a house, getting married. He's relying on making sure I can employ him so he can pay that mortgage and probably start a family up here. I want to make sure that can happen. You know, it's the same as when, you know, I was down in Lewiston and we toured the shoe manufacturing facility where they made the shoes for the Olympics. Rancourt Shoe made some beautiful red, white, and blue shoes for the Olympics. Talking with people there, again, who've seen layoffs, who've seen changes in industry, and they just want to know that the job they have now is going to be there next year. People who worked in paper mills for decades, for generations, followed the rules, lost their job through no fault of their own, and they're mostly working now, but working 2 jobs or 3 jobs instead of 1 job that allowed them to save a little money, maybe take a vacation, afford their bills. Now they're working 2 jobs or 3 jobs that don't even begin to cover it. And that's the theme across. That's why you hear me talk about stopping bad things from happening. Because if we're going to grow, we have to make sure we've stabilized ourselves. That means we have to make sure, whether it's stopping harmful proposals to Medicare and Social Security, whether it's fighting against bad trade deals that send our jobs overseas, fighting to make sure that veterans who served our country can have the health care and benefits and economic opportunity that they need when they come back, and that we can have communities where families can thrive. It's not too much to ask. But so that's what I hear when I go around the district.
Who's got a plan for economic development in Maine?
Well, I think it's going to take a lot of people, but I will say that for me, I think that we have to, number one, trade deals are a big issue. The trade deals that threaten our businesses, threaten our laws, threaten the standards that we have in place for the environment and for labor, for the workforce, focusing on small business development. But I think we have to invest in ourselves. It's roads and bridges, access to high-speed internet. I toured an organic seed farm that now does 70% of its business online. He can't get high-speed internet, and 70% of his business is coming in over the internet. And now if you're in rural Maine, your banking, your healthcare, so much of it relies on access to the internet, and there's so much of Maine that's not connected. And when you drive from Millinocket to East Millinocket, your cell phone service shouldn't drop. But it does. And if you're a small business owner, that's just terrible. You're on the line with a customer, you need to make sure it happens. So I think it's about getting back to basics. Getting back to the basics of making sure that main saying, you can't get there from here, is more of a joke than a reality, right?
So how can you go about seeing that it's done?
Well, I gotta get elected first. That's number one.
Okay.
And then after that, we gotta bring to bear the skills that I've had from my time in the legislature working on these exact issues.
So do you have a plan, working around in the head, to activate this?
Yes, absolutely. We are working on that plan for sure, and bringing people together to solve those problems. That's why I'm doing these tours.
Is it written down?
It's going to be released, yes.
Okay.
I'm not rolling it out today, but yes,
Okay.
there is a plan. It is written down, and we plan to release it here in another few weeks. And I want to thank you for asking me, because very few people ask me for things like that. I get a lot of questions, but very few people, want to know about the work you've put into planning for what's next. And I certainly have been doing that work, and we'll be getting ready for that in the next few weeks.
If you give me your email address, I'll email it to you in all of its glory. You can read all of those
I
pages.
thank you very much.
Yeah, I really will.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
We have to have a paper here that if anybody else wants the same thing, we write down all our
Sure, we can
emails.
definitely do that. We
Can
can
you
get
supply
the
it to me?
information.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Well, because we want to make sure. I mean, I think
I used to be an expediter, so this is,
maybe we need to. You need to come on the road with me. I feel like you're somebody who gets things done. That's
zip
great.
zip.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any stories we need to hear today? You got an expert here on Social Security and Medicare. Ask him anything.
What are the chances of raising the limit? Was it 116,000, something like that now?
The limit, and the gentleman's asking about the wage cap, the limit on payroll tax, which is $118,500. After that, there's no more payroll tax. We support eliminating it. Bernie Sanders supported eliminating it for a while. Then he supported keeping it where it is and starting again at 250,000, which politically is easier. And I think, and Hillary Clinton and the Democratic platform that I helped develop is more general, but it talks about bringing more revenue into the program by adjusting the cap. It is not fair that someone who makes $20 million a year is paying the same amount of payroll tax as someone that's making $118,000 a year. You know, a lot of people at town hall meetings I've held don't even know there's a cap because they pay Social Security and all their wages. They've never reached the cap, and they just assume that's what everybody pays. Now, the example I have been using lately about how unfair this is, the cap is $118,500 a year. And who's the basketball player? Now I've forgotten his name, from Cleveland, who's a big, who am I thinking?
LeBron James.
LeBron James. LeBron
Good
James.
for you.
The cap is $118,500. LeBron James, based on his contract, stops paying payroll tax halfway through the first quarter of the first game of the basketball season. After that, no more payroll tax the rest of the quarter, the rest of the game, that season, the playoffs, the championship.
That's an amazing.
So that is, you know,
analogy.
that there's something wrong there.
There's a jaw dropper.
And
Yeah.
I bet, I'd love to meet LeBron James, but I bet you that he'd be okay paying payroll taxes at least for that whole first quarter. I bet.
Yeah.
Work
So
for
to
one
me,
game.
and you know, I grew up in Omaha, and we have someone you may have heard of, Warren Buffett, who still lives in the same house that's about 2 miles from where I grew up. And I've heard him complain. I've known him a little bit, but I've heard him complain about this, and he pays as much in Social Security tax as his secretary. That's
Yeah,
not
he
right.
kept saying it's unfair.
Yeah.
But he doesn't stimulate anyone to have it be changed.
Well, I think Hillary Clinton was there in Omaha about 2 weeks ago. Actually, it was the first place she went after the Democratic convention. I was there at the convention, and her first stop was Omaha, because like Maine, there are 2 states that electoral votes are divided by congressional district, and you have 2 districts here. Nebraska has 3, and the Omaha area is a district, so that was her first stop, and she was introduced by Warren Buffett, so he's working on her.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
I should know the answer, but it's escaping me. Does Congress pay into Social Security
Yes.
and Medicare? Okay.
They have. They didn't until the early 80s, and then they were brought in, yes.
So what is it, what force is it that's keeping that cap in place? Why is that, why is there not a change? There has to be some force that's creating obstacles.
There are a lot of people that don't want to pay more in Social Security tax, and they contribute a lot of money to a lot of candidates. And you know, anytime anybody starts talking about that, instead of looking at how fair and reasonable it would be, you're for raising taxes, and a lot of people don't want to be accused of that. Even though the bill that I mentioned, that has, I think, about 100 co-sponsors, John Larson of Hartford, Connecticut, he raises the cap by starting payroll tax again at $450. So there's no increase for anyone between $118.5 and $450. And like I said, politically, that's a lot easier because you're going to affect a lot fewer people. But those people that would pay more in payroll tax get a larger benefit as well. And you know, that makes sense because you want to encourage them to feel all right about it. But even so, you bring in enough money, they can get a larger benefit. You have the formula is adjusted so their benefits are increased. You can raise the minimum benefit. You can have a COLA, a real COLA, which you don't have this year or in 2010 or 11, and you can extend the life of the program by about 35 years. For just having the payroll tax apply to those people who are making over $450,000 a year, and a lot of those people they could afford it. LeBron could.
You need to work with LeBron. He should go on the road with you.
Yeah.
In between games, of course.
There's a group, I'll stop here, but because this is something I really feel strongly about. There's a lobbying organization in Washington that has, it's CEOs of big corporations, not retired, but current CEOs. And they had a plan they put out on Social Security, long-term solvency, and it was raising the retirement age, reducing benefits, reducing the COLA, all of that stuff. Nothing in there about about the cap, which is so obvious to me. So I had the staff do a little research into how much money these CEOs were making. The highest paid the lowest paid CEO made $4.5 million that year. The highest paid CEO, I did the math, stopped paying FICA tax when he had lunch on New Year's Day. That's when he had made
When he did what?
When he had lunch on New Year's Day.
Oh.
At half day on the first day of the year, he had reached the cap. So when you think about these,
Do you think we should raise the retirement age? How do you feel about that?
I don't think,
understand.
I'm not for it. It's a cut in benefits.
Yeah.
Raising the retirement age is a cut in benefits. Now, there are some people that can work longer, but there are a lot of people that can't work longer.
That's right.
And they're working in the kinds of jobs, teachers, nurses, factories. You know, you could solve Social Security's problem by raising the retirement age to 100. But that's unrealistic. And I think raising it beyond 67 is not a good idea. We are opposed to that.
Not to 70.
No. Everybody can't work till they're 70. I couldn't have worked till I was 70.
Not only that, but where are all these jobs? Where are these jobs for people that are 67, 68, 69?
Well, like
Those jobs aren't there.
Are you volunteering to be a lobster fisherman back there? I can hear you. Okay.
Artificial respiration. You okay?
I know nothing.
Okay.
Yes, over here.
Was this session meant just for questions on Medicare and Social Security?
It was.
If it is.
But
then-
we can. I'm happy to stay after and answer any question you like.
Okay.
How's
I'm
that?
somebody who's more interested in global issues like trashing of our oceans
Sure.
and things like that.
I'm happy. I've been endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters in the Sierra Club, and we can talk about that after for sure. Happy to do that.
And do you know about the proposal to have a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly?
You'll have to tell me more about that.
Okay.
What is that?
It would be modeled after the European Parliamentary Assembly
Mhm.
to the European Union.
You'll have to tell me more about that.
I
Thank
belong
you.
to a group that's pushing that.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Yeah, we'll talk after for sure. Thank
Jean,
you.
would you just say that again, because we couldn't hear what you were saying down here?
Well, I said I was interested in some global issues.
Yep.
Like environmental degradation trashing of our oceans, melting of the glaciers,
Yeah.
and establishment of a UN Parliamentary Assembly to democratize the United Nations, which a lot of people don't know about.
And I told her I'd be happy to talk with her afterwards about any of those things for sure. Yeah,
Be good to hear. Would be
Sure.
a good subject.
maybe you could be a speaker at another round table and you could educate the
That's
group.
an idea.
I know, that's great.
Should be good.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, the election is in 63 days. Only 63 more days of political commercials and mail for you to have to deal with. And I hope that in the next 63 days that if you have questions, if you took our pamphlet, contact information is on there, you get in touch with us. Let me know if there's anything you need. If you have questions about any issue, we want to be able to answer those. And I want to say thank you again to Max. We've been here for, I guess, probably an hour or so now. And if there's any final questions about Medicare and Social Security, we want to make sure we get those answered. But I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to come today. I hope to have the chance to come back again on any topic, and certainly I'd like to thank Max again for joining us.
Well, let me thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me, and you know, when you invited me, I thought about it, and I thought I'd come because you were a good candidate. You answered the questions the way we liked, and you interviewed with our board. But having spent the day up here and doing 3 events, I'm even more convinced.
Thank
No,
you.
I'm serious. She'd be a tremendous member of Congress, because she's not only gets it here, but she gets it here. That's important.
Thank you, Max. Yes.
Could you tell me what the 2 most salient points that we brought up are that you are going to bring back with you to the next group or to a higher power, whatever?
Yep, absolutely. So from this group today, I'd say that the 2 most important things that I've taken away, certainly number 1 is the inequity that faces our public employees who are left in very difficult situations, again, who've been following the rules, who have this double standard for what their retirement can be and what their retirement options are. I'd say that's number 1. And then we talked about a lot of issues today, but you know, I think the second most important thing that's been, you know, my takeaway from today is really, it's really about making sure that the prescription drug issue, I think that's the second one. The first one would be the offset and challenges. And the second would be the prescription drugs, because I believe if Medicare was allowed to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs, it would make the lives of seniors, not only in Maine, but across the country better. It would put a little more flexibility in their spending. And you know what they probably would do? Use it on heat or food, right? This is not about a vacation. You know, this is about Medicare. People who have Medicare who are paying more than they should for prescription drugs, and it's because there's a line in the law that prohibits a negotiation. And that's wrong. And so I think that's the second thing. When I think about the things that are that would make the biggest difference in people's lives across Maine, but all of the issues today are important.
Because my read is that we always talk about these situations.
Yeah.
We talk about the inequities and about the problems on both sides, on your side. And
Yeah,
your side,
absolutely.
my side. And we go back and 2 weeks later we have another meeting and we talk about the same things again, and there's never really any action. And
It's frustrating.
It always seems, and maybe I'm just negative at this point in time, but just before the election is when everybody starts talking a little bit more. And after the election, we go back into our little world. It really is time for whether we are the citizenry or whether the representatives really stop talking and to really take some action. And even if the action doesn't have 100% participation, we have to stop talking, we have to start doing. And I
Yeah.
can't, and
Amen.
I can't do that myself. I leave it to people on your side to
Yeah.
do that. So I'm speaking maybe for myself and maybe others, that we're at a tipping point right now where we have to start doing things. Everybody knows these problems exist. We all know what the inequities are. And no one's talking to each other. We're all just always identifying problems. We really need to make some changes and change. And not everybody's gonna be happy, but we have to do something other than,
We gotta take action. I agree. Well, my commitment to you is I gotta get elected. That's the first thing I gotta do, right? That's on me, and you have your own ways you can help on November 8th. But after that, my commitment to you is I'll come back. I'll come back in the first half of next year, and we'll talk about these issues again. I'll give you an update on where we stand, and we'll make sure that we have an update, and you'll have our contact information. But I don't necessarily think Congress changes because you change one person.
you understand
But it's
my
never,
point,
I do, but it's never gonna change at all if you don't start with right where you live. And I think in this case, when it comes to seniors issues, Social Security and Medicare, the economy, the contrast is stark, and I'm ready to take that challenge on. It's not gonna change overnight, but I accept your challenge, to be able to go and actually try to do something. It's a novel concept, I know, but it's something that I'm proud to have been a doer when I was at the State House in Augusta for 10 years. And you're right, you don't always make everybody happy, but if you're doing good work, try to actually get something done and not just make a speech or score a political point, then that's my definition of success. And I'd be happy to come back and make sure I'm reporting back to you on that on a regular basis.
I think it's funny, I just have to add, because you said this very thing to me in the car today. We were commiserating, and Emily Cain said, all right, we're gonna stop talking and planning, more doing. There's gonna be more doing.
This is my campaign manager, Corey, and I said that to her earlier today. I was like, I'm tired with the planning. Let's do the doing.
Well,
I'm
it
a
was
doer.
like he was singing your song.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Yeah, singing my notes all day long. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. Round of applause to you.